This is When Life Gives You Parkinson's. Is Parkinson's an artistic superpower? For some, it may be.
Doing artwork is the only time that I can totally check out. Like, it's the only time where my brain turns off, where it's not thinking of all the other things in life. I'm really free, and I like that a lot. It feels good.
Debra Magid is an artist living with Parkinson's disease. She's also the subject of a documentary called Shake With Me, which is now available for free on Vimeo.
You don't have to look at the camera.
I can keep talking to you. Yeah. Oh, that's a little more natural. Yeah. We'll start again. Hello. I am Debra Magid, and my son Zachary is behind the camera making this documentary. I am a lot of things in life. I am a mother and a wife and an artist and a designer. I was a daughter for a long time. I'm a sister. I think that covers it. I'm a cousin. I guess also now I'm a Parkinson's patient. But I think it says something that it took me till now to say that.
I met Debra at a screening of the documentary for the Michael J. Fox Foundation's Patient Council. In this episode of When Life Gives You Parkinson's, I took some of the clips from the film and chatted with Debra's son, Zack Grant, who's a photographer and filmmaker who lives in New York. The documentary was his idea. He directed, produced, and filmed it.
She was diagnosed in 2012, and it was a very secretive thing, even not just outside of our family, but within our family. Part of our family story is that my mom kept her diagnosis secret from my sister and I for almost a year. And I think that kind of environment of secrecy led to us wanting to really ask all these questions that I think for a long time that we couldn't ask.
The film explores a Parkinson's diagnosis through Zack's eyes with the help of his mom, her art, his dad, and his sister Elizabeth. The first symptom Zack's father Jim recalls is the tremor.
I noticed it for a couple weeks at the kitchen table during dinners, that she had this little tremor. And what I had to go on about how Mom was feeling was, she said to me, "We're not telling the children." She was scared. We both were. Still am.
You were older, so you had already sort of started your path. You had started your journey into whatever your life was going to be. But your sister was still living at home. And I was afraid, if she thought I was sick, that, she wouldn't even go to college, that she wouldn't launch. And I didn't want that to happen.
I was in her drawer, and I saw a pill bottle wedged in the very back of the drawer. But as soon as I saw it said Department of Neuroscience on it, I knew. So I can only imagine what it's like to have your body is telling your secret, but you're not ready.
My parents invited me up one Sunday, totally innocuously. And then my mom and I were sitting outside, and she, said, "I have something to tell you." And she explained. And the moment she said something, I immediately noticed that her hand was shaking, which kind of was all I could think about was how I didn't see that.
Do you remember that conversation with me?
You mean the conversation where I told you that I had Parkinson's? Oh, absolutely. Sitting in the backyard? Yeah, totally. I remember totally. I felt terrible telling you. I felt like I was changing your life in a not positive way. And in my mind from the outside, it seems to me like this project is how you have processed the fact that I have Parkinson's. This has been your vehicle to understand it.
Like many people, I didn't really understand Parkinson's at all when she told me. I had this very kind of limited, almost stereotypical view of what Parkinson's meant. So my mind kind of went to the most extreme kind of stereotypical places with it without really understanding that there's no playbook for Parkinson's, that, the diagnosis takes shape on an individual level and really can't be predicted. But I had no clue. I had no understanding of that when she told me. So I immediately, kind of assumed the worst. And we've been very fortunate 7 years in, and, the progression has been noticeable, but quite slow.
Slow, but notable, at least for Debra when she's painting.
Do you hear that? Or is it only me who hears that? Do you hear something shaking? Like, no, it stopped. Sometimes I'm not aware I'm shaking, and then I'll hear the sound of the vibration. That, do you hear that? That's my hand. That must be the table or the cup or something's rattling because my hand is shaking. You know, this is one of the times when I don't feel totally in control of my hands. Most of the time it doesn't bother me, but this does.
Just holding it?
It feels like, even though, you know, I can see, looking at the movement, I'm doing the movement I need to be doing, but it doesn't feel the same to me. It feels like thick. You know, I'm right-handed, and right now the Parkinson's is only on my left side, and particularly my left hand. So I do feel lucky that I can control everything on my right hand. My left hand shakes sometimes when I'm holding the paints or the water or something like that, but that doesn't matter.
My mom's art is this, it really toes the line between reality and abstraction. And I think that's an interesting theme just when I think about her life over the last 5 years in general, is like her reality is Parkinson's disease, but in a way she kind of wants to not ignore that, but put that in a back burner and live in this kind of alternate universe where she can control everything as much as she wants. And I think, you know, she does these really striking abstract portraits where, you know, you have these massive eyes that create such intrigue. And, you know, there's a part in the film that talks about what she sees when she looks into the eyes of the portraits that she creates.
As soon as I put those eyes in, I can see her looking at me. Like, I can see her sort of spirit in there. She has those intense eyes, those really deep brown eyes.
And so in a way, kind of projecting stories through the eyes of her subjects is a mode of escapism.
Well, and you talk about the eyes, but as I looked at some of her portraits, which are just striking, they all almost have the Parkinson's masked face, where there's not a lot of expression.
Interesting.
Everything's powerful through the eyes, and she really puts a lot of power and emotion into the hair of people.
Yes. Well, so hair is where she really bends bends reality. You know, like somebody could have brown hair, and in her portraits they'll have striking red or purple hair. So I think, you know, that's something that my mom has become a bit of a signature in terms of taking certain elements and making them real and projecting real emotions into them through eyes and mouths and noses. But then also, you know, whether it's through skin tones or through hair, really just turning that whole equation on its head. And, you know, my mom says reality is boring. And so I think that's something that comes through a lot in her paintings.
Well, and it's what's great about it is it's kind of, she's part of a trend. I mean, I know last year I took a painting for Parkinson's course and workshop, and they taught you how to, you know, do like a watercolor with, you know, a boat scene or whatever, and which was great. And it's a creative outlet, and for a lot of people, their creativity juices just, you know, turn on full volume when they get Parkinson's.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out. I was like, is this what happens? My mom insists that she was going to get back into art when my sister went away to college, regardless. But I have to think that there's some connection, and I think whether it's brain chemistry or it's just this sense of urgency. I see a lot in my mom, this sense of urgency of, you know, my right hand could start to be affected by Parkinson's any day. And so if I'm not as productive as I could possibly be through the context of my artwork, I'm wasting time.
I do feel really lucky to have found such a strong voice, later in my life. Maybe I needed this major life-changing event to happen before I could figure out what my voice was. I think Parkinson's is just like a little bird sitting on your shoulder going, tick-tock, tick-tock. Time is going, and don't waste what you have.
That's a big theme in the film is this kind of ticking clock of when you don't know when exactly it's going to expire. But I will say, though, that my mom will definitely continue to make artwork regardless of how her Parkinson's evolves. I don't think she would ever give it up. It just might have to evolve and change. But her work has evolved immensely over the last 3.5 years. So I think whatever evolution will need to happen to support that will be a natural evolution.
When and if it happens that my right hand starts to go, I'll just figure out another way to do it. I'm not going to stop.
When she watched your art, your movie, of her
Yes.
doing her art, what did she notice and how did she feel about it?
She was very overwhelmed. I couldn't watch it with her. It was just it would have been too overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I sent her a link, and she called me, right after she watched it, and kind of in a state of shock. So I think originally it was just shock. As time goes on, with every viewing, she definitely notices new details that come through within the film. And the reality is, some of the earliest footage is from the fall of 2016. And so there are certainly some physical changes that, looking at my mom today, you notice. And that's kind of for me, that's the hardest part, is that I've always thought of this film as capturing the now, and in a way I can see how things have changed and potentially will continue to change.
Yeah, it's a nice time capsule. I mean, I think it was meant to be, hey, this is what we're going through now. And now it's like, that's what we did then.
Totally. Oh, totally. And, that's not lost upon me, that this will live forever and be something that we can point to that captures this moment in time and tells other people this moment in time, regardless of how things change.
In talking with Zack, I could tell that while the film is about his mom's Parkinson's and how it impacts her art, it really turned out to be about a lot more than that.
On both of our levels, and as well as my father, as well as my sister, who are also part of the film, there was this desire to have these conversations about how Parkinson's has affected our family. I think if I knew that was the goal of the film, and I kind of put that into my pitch to my mom to start, I think she might have had second thoughts about it. But because my focus was around art and the realities of being an artist with Parkinson's, it felt a bit more contained and
Right.
like a fun thing to do together. I don't think if I told her at the time, in 2016, that this would be a close to 4-year process, that she would have necessarily agreed to it.
Because the film involves the whole family, depending on if you're a person with Parkinson's, a care partner, a son or a daughter or a friend of someone with PD, everyone seems to be able to get something from it.
For those who are not Parkinson's patients, I've heard from a few people who have seen the film that they really identify with my dad and my sister, because they want to be, they understand the balance of being endlessly optimistic, but also being a realist about what the future holds at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little, I guess, melancholy at times when just looking and hearing the conversations with like your dad. You can sense that he is thinking about the future.
I do worry about the fact that drawing is such a part of her life now, because she has this thing she didn't do her entire life since she's like 22 or 23, and now it's immersed in her life, and it's hopefully something she never has to give up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a lot of tension in that for our family in general, of like how to not think about the future, but also plan for the future all at the same time. I think nobody teaches you those skills of like how to be endlessly supportive, but also want to talk about, what happens, what type of house should we live in, all the practical considerations that come with, Parkinson's diagnosis over time. Those are real things that, real decisions come from, but you also understand, my mom's method of coping and a lot of people's method of coping is just to be, we'll cross that bridge when it comes. So there's this real tension in the film within my family that I think a lot of people related to in that you have to find this balance where you can be able to talk about the future and acknowledge the realities of the future, but also live in the present and enjoy the present as much as possible.
Many of us have been through the wide range of emotions of accepting or wrestling with Parkinson's. I asked Zack how the cameras impacted their discussions.
It depended on who I was talking to. After a certain point, we got a few months in, my mom and I filming, and had done a handful of shoot days. And the boundary of the camera kind of started to disappear in a really nice way, where I could ask these really pointed, direct questions like, why did you hide it from my sister and I for a year? The camera kind of became invisible, which is, in documentary, that's the best thing you can ask for. When it came to my dad and sister, I think they were a bit more apprehensive around it. We had all spoke individually about the diagnosis, separate of my mom, but I think there was some apprehension of talking about my mom without her there on camera. So that was an element that we kind of just had to feel out. I was definitely had to be pushier than I would have liked to be in the context of an interview to just get my dad and sister to open up. But I mean, as far as the stuff that we got, they're arguably the most compelling factors in the film, because my mom is this source of incredible, inspiring positivity, which I think you have to have as a Parkinson's patient. But my dad and sister, they're grounded in reality, which is also very important.
So you do the film, you're touring the film, you're telling your story. How's the family doing now?
My family has come to terms with what the diagnosis is right now. And in a lot of ways, that's a very manageable thing to kind of come to terms with. My mom's art is thriving. She lives a fairly normal life. She travels, she drives, she works, she paints. So Parkinson's has a role in her life for sure, but it's always an evolving thing in terms of, medication and my mom being more willing to try medication, or symptoms evolving and her, being more frustrated by them. She's much more honest and transparent about that stuff than where we came from. But again, that's, I think that's something we take very much one day at a time. My family's been able to come to terms with that over the last 6-7 years. But I do think and that there will be kind of this next stage of if her Parkinson's gets worse or becomes more debilitating or requires different kinds of support. I think we're prepared for that, but we also we'll have to kind of learn through that at the same time.
Yeah, get those cameras rolling.
Nah. Well, I don't know if there's a phase two. The beauty of what I am really proud of in the film is it really captures this moment of the now.
Yeah.
When in the content after filming for 2 years, I kind of had to make a larger existential decision of, what was this film about? Was this about tracking an illness, or was this a film about capturing this very unique moment in time for my family? And I kind of netted out with the latter. And that's, you've obviously seen the film, but the film ends in a way where the ending is kind of undefined. And I think that's really true to our experience right now, is that we've been able to capture and encapsulate in a really amazing way the last 5 years, but the future is really yet to be written. And I didn't want to make a film that was about kind of tracking a degenerative disease. There's certainly amazing films out there that do that.
How has it changed you?
Changed me. I think in general, it's made me, both as a filmmaker and just a person in general, much more in tune with the way I feel about things. I think this film was this, not cry for attention, but was this really ambitious way of trying to get more in touch with my feelings around Parkinson's. And kind of now I'm in this place artistically where I want to do more personal stories. And in fact, I don't really want to touch anything that I can't find a personal way into. So for me as a filmmaker, it's kind of set off this light bulb of understanding the types of stories I want to tell and understanding how I work best as far as being a creative. On a human level, as a person, I'm definitely, it's having conversations with my mom now is easy. I can say, oh, I've noticed this or that, or I'll forward her random things that the Fox Foundation or other resources emails me. So in terms of the communication within the family and the communication with just anybody in my world, it comes so naturally at this point to talk about what Parkinson's means and not on a surface level to really get into the details of it. So this project, I say it all the time and I don't mean it lightly. It's been totally life-changing for both me and my family at large.
The film, Shake With Me, is about 30 minutes long and available for free on Vimeo. The link is in the show notes, or just Google Shake With Me Film, and it'll come up. Thanks to Zack Grant, Debra Magid, Jim Grant, and Elizabeth Grant for letting us peek into their lives. Debra has a website where she sells her paintings. You can check it out at debramagid.com. 25% of the proceeds go to the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's research. As I've said many times on this podcast and throughout my journey, the more we're willing to tell our stories of Parkinson's and raise awareness of the disease, the more funds are raised and the more research we can do, and the closer we get to stopping PD in its tracks. How did you or your family deal with Parkinson's? Has PD made you more artsy, more creative, more hopeful? You can record a voice message for this podcast at speakpipe.com/whenlifegivesyouparkinson's. Denise Kelly did just that. She called in after listening to the last episode.
Hi, it's Denise Kelly from North Vancouver, and I have just finished listening to the podcast where Jeanette and Barry openly and authentically tell their story about Jeanette's misdiagnosis, and I am so touched. I laughed, I cried, and I just want to say kudos for the strength that you had to share your story openly. And I want you to know that Brendan and I and our family, who have known you for a long time, truly are there for you. And I hope you felt the love that we've tried to share with you during this terrible time. Even though we haven't seen you, my heart is there with you. And I think you know that. And I look forward to being a part of your community loving care team. And I am there, and I can't wait for us to discuss how we can get through those hungover days that you feel sometimes, and do some fun things and spend lots of time together. So I just wanted to say love you, and thank you for finding the means in which you can share your story, and I look forward to sharing that with others so that they don't have to go through the same thing. Cheers.
Thanks, Denise. I forwarded that message directly to Jeanette and Barry, and they're very appreciative. Leave your message at speakpipe.com/whenlifegivesyouparkinson's. So now you have a new documentary to watch. I'd also like to put in a quick plug for Tim Haig's book, Perseverance. It's soon to be available in paperback wherever you buy books. In your book, Perseverance, the 7 skills you need to survive, thrive, and accomplish more than you ever imagined, you talk about the nature of luck. And do you think your Parkinson's diagnosis as it relates to entering the Amazing Race was just sort of a stroke of luck?
Yeah, you could look at it that way. Because, I mean, they always look for interesting backstories, right? They look for that story that they can tell, and there has yet to be another story quite like ours, and we were very fortunate in that regard. And then
as it relates to your son and him being able to do all those heavy lifting things, it's what you talk about, accepting your limits and focusing on what you can do and accomplishing more than you ever thought possible. I mean, it's really, it's a really cool story.
Well, thank you. We're continually blessed and pleased that people take away encouragement and the the hope that they seem to find in the story. That's very meaningful to us. And yeah, it's true. I mean, accepting limits is the fact that there was a day in the race that I probably wouldn't have gotten through it by myself. And I could have chosen to not ask my son for help that day and probably failed, or at least done far worse than we would have otherwise. And that's a bit of pride that's sometimes hard to swallow. You know, we don't always like to go there, but the fact is we went further in the race because I did. And so that was, you know, awesome. He was incredible help.
Do you find it easier the more you ask for help or admit, I can't do this today, that it gets easier over time to not put on that veneer of, oh, I'm great today, even when you're not?
No.
You still do it, don't you?
Yeah, it's always hard, right? I'm 54 years old. I'm not even at Freedom 55 yet, and yet I've been retired for 3 years. That's still a hard pill to swallow, and I think there's lots of us like that, that it's just tough a lot of days. But I work very hard at staying balanced, at realizing that there are millions, if not billions, of people on the planet who would trade places with me today, even with my Parkinson's, if they had the choice. Because my life is still so much better in so many ways than so many people. So you try to keep that perspective, that regardless of Parkinson's, I have been blessed beyond measure. So on those days when I don't want to ask for help, on those days that I'm irritated that I do have to ask for help, try to remember to just ask and be gracious in it nonetheless.
Perseverance. It's soon to be available in paperback wherever you buy books.
All right, Larry, thank you. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye. And our partners at Parkinson Canada have updated and released new Parkinson's clinical guidelines, which address many aspects of diagnosis. You can read more online at parkinsonsclinicalguidelines.ca. Also, I want to remind you there's a great 52-week-long fundraiser underway. 25 of my friends and I have put together a fundraiser on Facebook that's rotating every 2 weeks to a different person. So Tim Haig will do it for 2 weeks, and Becca Miller will do it 2 weeks, and some others that you've heard on the podcast before. And it's rotating through 11 different countries through the year of 2020. And so every 2 weeks it goes to somebody else. I've already done mine, but you can donate anytime at wpc2022.org/YOPD fund. We're raising money for travel grants for people with young onset Parkinson's disease to join us at the World Parkinson Congress in Barcelona in 2022. We thank you for your help. We're hoping to raise $50,000. Next time on When Life Gives You Parkinson's. As somebody who has Parkinson's, that people are like, how'd you get it? I'm like, I don't know.
Every Parkinson patient gets it for a different reason.
We had instantaneous young onset Parkinson's due to a contaminant in a synthetic heroin.
So we've identified paraquat as a potential disruptor, so I'm sure that's illegal everywhere in the world, right?
No, absolutely not. It's actually still one of the most widely used herbicides in the world.
Some of the genetic risk factors don't do anything unless you're exposed to certain environmental toxins. So not everybody who's exposed to paraquat gets Parkinson's.
What we do know is that when you do an autopsy on the brains of individuals who have had Parkinson's, we know that they have Lewy bodies, these clumping, what we call the clumping of alpha-synuclein. We know they have these clumps in their brains. And so the theory is, let's go after these clumps because they exist and they don't exist in the brains of individuals who don't have Parkinson's disease.
Whether it's head trauma, your diet, pesticides, and your genetic background, you add it all up, some people get Parkinson's.
This is When Life Gives You Parkinson's, a Curious Cast podcast. Our presenting sponsor is Parkinson Canada, parkinson.ca. Thank you to our special guest, Zack Grant, Debra's son and the filmmaker. The website for the film is shakewithmefilm.com, and you can view the film Shake With Me for free on Vimeo. You can check out Zack's other work at zackgrant.com. Debra Magid is sharing her Parkinson's story, and we thank her for that. And you can check out her art at her website, debramagid.com. Also thanks to Jim Grant, Debra's husband, and Elizabeth Grant, Debra's daughter. If you're interested in other episodes of how families deal with diagnosis, try Season 1, Episode 2, titled Sharing the Diagnosis, Saying I Love You, and the Larry Filter. It's where I talk to my siblings about my new diagnosis. And if you want to hear about another Parkinson's film, Season 1 Extra Dosage from November 14th, Lights, Camera, Parkinson's, about the film The New Music. Special thanks to our promotional partners Spotlight YOPD and Parkinson's IQ Plus U, the free series of Parkinson's events from the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And thank you to you. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And while you're there, give us a 5-star rating. And please share in the comments why you recommend listening to this podcast. You can also engage with us on social media. It's at Parkinson's Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Or you can email at parkinsonspod@curiouscast.ca. When Life Gives You Parkinson's is written and hosted by me, Larry Gifford, and Nikki Reitmeyer. Dila Velazquez is our story producer, and sound design by Rob Johnston. Keep positive, keep exercising, keep listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Canada may be known for its landscapes and friendly people, but beneath the surface lies a darker side of crime, history, and the paranormal. Since 2017, the award-winning Dark Poutine podcast has explored the shadowy corners of the Great White North and beyond, delivering chilling tales from a uniquely Canadian perspective. Hosted by Mike Brown and Matthew Stockton with over 300 episodes and fresh releases every Monday, Dark Poutine is your weekly ticket to the creepier side of Canada. Listen to Dark Poutine on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts.